Hey guys, Kevin here. Yeah, I know the hair, right? Ignore it. There's something very important we have to talk about today. Everybody in America needs to know about this. There is a crisis, guys. A crisis. Despite our mainstream media and their esteemed efforts to raise awareness about this over the last few years, nobody is addressing it. And of course, I am talking about the rise in hate groups in America. So this story is from the Washington Post, a very reputable news organization who are not being sued right now for $250 million for lying about a young boy in a MAGA hat. But the story goes, hate groups in the U.S. remain on the rise, according to a new study. Hate groups continue to expand their reach in the United States last year during a tumultuous 12 months marked by racist violence, social media attacks, and the deadly white supremacist rally in Charlottesville, according to a nonprofit legal advocacy organization that monitors extremist activity. So I know what you're all thinking. What is this group that's out there doing God's work, monitoring and reporting on these vicious hate groups? And of course the answer is the SPLC, or Southern Poverty Law Center. Now, for people who don't know, the SPLC is a nonprofit organization who happen to get tens of millions of dollars a year and whose founders are all multi-millionaires. But ignore that. They do important work. They monitor and report on the enemies of the Democratic Party. I mean, hate groups. So the media have done a great job of covering the rise in hate crimes in America since Donald Trump took office. And we've seen the great work they do, like the time they covered the young girl whose hijab was pulled off by herself. And recently when they covered that young actor who was beaten up in Chicago by black Nigerian white supremacists for the only crime of being gay, black, and having a show that was about to fire him. So we hear about those attacks a lot, but I want to know who it is that's committing these crimes. Who are these groups? So I went to the SPLC's website where they have so many different hate groups listed that they actually have a great feature that allows you to search for hate groups based on the category of hate. For instance, you can search for anti-religious hate groups. Like right here, it allows you to search for anti-Islamic hate groups. And, well, that's it actually. There's no category for anti-Christian or anti-Buddhist hate groups, probably because nobody hates those types of religions. They also let you search by racial hate. So you can search for white supremacist groups. You can search for white nationalist groups. There's actually black nationalist groups too. Who knew? There were no Hispanic nationalist groups and there were no Native American nationalist groups or anything like that. But I guess, those groups don't hate anybody. Of course, they also let you search by gender. You can search for anti-LGBTQ groups or anti-woman groups. There were no anti-straight white male groups. And of course, that's because nobody in this country hates straight white males. If they did, there would be evidence of this, and there's not. And I don't want to get into conspiracy theories, so let's move along. All right, guys, I'm done being sarcastic. I want to get serious because this is important. I did go to the SPLC's website. They list all these groups. Just like I said, there are no anti-Christian groups. There are no anti-straight groups. But we know these groups exist. We know that there are groups like La Raza and Mecha that are Hispanic nationalist groups. And they're just not listed on the SPLC's website. And that's because the SPLC exists to promote a certain agenda. And that agenda to me seems to be anti-Americanism, anti-capitalism, anti-traditionalism. And you can see it by the groups that they're starting to list as hate groups. The number of hate groups in America has not increased. And not by definition a hate group. What these organizations like the SPLC and the ADL are doing are incorporating any group that goes against their agenda into what they profile as a hate group. And the worst thing about it is that these groups then make policy, not just for businesses like Facebook and Google and YouTube, but for governments. for schools. And these schools, they can determine if your kids get accepted based on any association with groups listed in these categories. And so me, as a former Proud Boy, which is one of the groups listed, my children might not be able to get into a certain school when they get older. And this is important that we shine a light on what's going on with the SPLC. Now let me show you guys some examples of the groups that they've listed as hate groups that have popped up over the last 4 years, because they're trying to use these groups to set this narrative that Donald Trump is responsible for a rise in hate in America, and it's completely bogus. The first group listed is Act for America. Act for America is the group founded by Brigitte Gabriel, somebody I have met in person and you might have seen on Fox News. This group was founded after 9/11. They focus on raising awareness to the oppression and violence that is caused by Islamic radicals. The group is made up of a lot of people who would normally be associated with the left: gays, Muslims, women. These groups are speaking out against hate and violence and are not a hate group by any stretch. But because what they're talking about and the work they're doing goes against some agenda of the left, the SPLC has labeled them a hate group. Number 2 is American Family Association. Number 3 is the American Promise Ministries. I don't know anything about these two groups, so I looked at what the SPLC said about them, and basically they said that they are pro-life groups who oppose gay marriage. And to me, that makes them pretty much mainstream with the rest of America. But because the Democratic Party has moved so far to the left, the SPLC has decided anybody who aligns themselves with those two things are now a hate group. Next up, and you're going to laugh, but it is the American College of Pediatricians. That's right, in 2019, in Trump's America, doctors who take care of babies are worse than Hitler. And what got this group onto the SPLC's hate watch list? Well, because they published scientific studies that showed that little boys are not the same as little girls, and because they put out other facts that the left disagree with. These next two groups really highlight how despicable the SPLC is and what their true agenda is. First, you have the Center for Immigration Studies. This is a group that actually reports on illegal immigration and the cost of illegal immigration, the crime committed by illegal immigrants. They are pro-legal immigration, but because they oppose open borders and this anti-American, anti-law and order agenda, they are labeled a hate group. Next, you have the Center for Security Policy, a group that monitors gang activity and terrorist activity. Because they do that, they are labeled a hate group by the SPLC, and I'm sure the press and everybody on the left would also call them a hate group, despite the fact that they're trying to protect America, and they do outreach and they consult with law enforcement agencies. These are patriots, but because they're patriotic, they're labeled hate groups. And that brings me to the last two groups I'll mention here. There are many others, but I think these two are worth mentioning because I have a personal involvement with these two groups. I'll start with Oath Keepers. Oath Keepers is a wonderful organization. It was founded by a former military JAG officer who actually wanted to start a group of members of the military, police forces, fire departments, people who took an oath to the Constitution, who would pledge to defend the Constitution no matter what kind of tyranny America fell under. And basically, it was just a support group for a lot of us original members. We had been in the wars, we got out, we wanted to hang out with other military guys, so I've been in since the beginning. In fact, I helped found a few chapters, and they do great work, okay? They've expanded into just being a welcoming group for anybody who loves America and the Constitution, but they go out to places where there's emergencies, like after hurricanes. They do charity work, they do medical work, Just a great organization all around. I recommend everybody look into the Oath Keepers. If you love America, they're a great group of guys. Everywhere I've been, the chapter has been wonderful. So I don't understand why they're labeled a hate group, other than a political agenda that wants to slander a wonderful organization and a wonderful group of guys, and it pisses me the hell off that they're on this list. So many of you know I am a farmer proud boy. I was one of the first members of this organization back in the early days. I was vice president of the group here for a short while. I'm ending with the Proud Boys because they are the closest thing to a hate group on this list. But it's not because they hate minorities. Oh, no, no, no. Proud Boys go out of their way to virtue signal about how much they love minorities. You know, they put gays and blacks and Hispanics in positions of leadership just so they can say, hey, look, we're not racist or we're not homophobic. And they're not. You know, these guys are not. But this was a contention I had with the Proud Boys group before I was booted out. And that is, if you're not racist, if you're not homophobic, why are you always apologizing? Why are you always on the defensive? And that's what bothered me, that they had to go that far, that they had to put people who are gay in leadership positions, that they were always on the defensive with the media, always trying to disavow different people because they might be considered too far right or have ties to white nationalism in some weird way. It was pointless, it was destructive, and once the media smelled blood, they realized that the Proud Boys were an easy target. And that's why they're on this list. Because they were an easy target. They made themselves look weak to the media and they attacked. And so they went after the media, or after the Proud Boys, even harder. And the Proud Boys, the reason I say that they're the closest thing to a hate group on this list is because they do hate a group. They hate people who are anti-American, or anti-Western, I should say, people like communists. None of these other groups really hate anybody, but the Proud Boys do think that the West is the best. They are Western supremacists. So I guess you could argue that they hate anti-American pieces of crap like the people at the SPLC, and that makes them a hate group. And for all the differences I might have with the Proud Boys and disagreements, I love those guys, and I think that they love America, and that's all that matters to me, because the new divide, as I said before, is not right versus left or based on any racial division. It's people who love America, who want a country, and people who don't. And so there's one hate group that I think is the biggest threat to America. In fact, the biggest threat to the West that we have ever seen or experienced in our history, and that hate group is the SPLC. These scumbags at the SPLC and the people like them in the media and in the Democratic Party, they are the biggest threat to this country, and we need to shed a light on who they are and what they're doing. And the media are running with this story about all these hate groups. Well, they're the hate group. Anyway, guys, I hope you liked this video. I hope you will like and subscribe to my channel. If you want to support me, I have a new account with PayPal because I got striked on my YouTube channel. And I had my Patreon, but I was going to leave them anyway. They suck. So you can support this channel at www.paypal.me/HailHydra1. That's the link right there in the photo. I'm out, guys. Later.